What is the dumbest thing your parents did while raising you? When I was too young to talk, my sister pushed me down the steps and I had broken both of my collarbones, unbeknownst to my parents. For a few days afterward they were getting such a huge kick out of the fact that whenever they raised my hands above my shoulders I would just start crying for no reason. Yeah, I'm pretty happy I don't remember that. When I was 15 my mom found some NSFW pictures I had taken for my long distance boyfriend with the webcam and deleted. I forgot to empty the recycle bin and I discovered them recovered and saved into a folder made specifically for them. When I confronted my mother about it, she informed me that my stepfather had saved them and that if I wanted to act like a slut, I should expect to be treated like one. He was considerably younger than her, by about 25 years, and he passed the pictures around to all of his friends. My mom would invite them over and basically offer me up for sex. They would ask what I wanted to drink, and when they arrived, my mom would tease me, but isolate the friends and I leaving us alone to have a good time. When I moved in with them, she converted the dog's room into my room, which basically meant one of those foam fold-out chairs that turns into a bed on a bare floor, because the carpet had to be ripped up, because of all the piss and shit. Room still smelled like shit, and I had to live out of a suitcase. She also left me for a week and a half by myself with one of their friends staying in the house with $20 and a note to spend it on dog food. Oh yeah, and once when I had severe bronchitis I asked to go to the doctor. She said she couldn't afford it. I came back to the apartment later to find out she had gone with the neighbor to an amusement park. Thanks, Ma. This will probably be buried, but that was exceptionally cathartic. Thanks Reddit. I'm bilingual. Growing up I spoke both English and Khmer. My family would make fun of how I spoke Khmer and ridicule me. To this day I refuse to speak Khmer to my parents, but will speak it to anyone else. Now I make fun of their English. They never gave me a key to the house. Like explicitly made a point to never give me a key, and I had to be out of the house if they were gone. So there I am, parents gone, and I can't stay in my own house. Everyone I tell this to looks at me like I'm an alien. Some might consider this smart, but I don't. Whenever I had a female friend come over or talk over the phone they would make fun of me. Even though it was lighthearted, it made me avoid having close female friends. I have still never been in a relationship. I'm 22, and I only recently had my first kiss and lost my virginity at 21. I survived cancer as a child. In retrospect, this was hard on my parents. Not the fact that I survived it, the part where they had to watch their kid go through chemotherapy. One of the drugs I got was called methotrexate. Methotrexate has some neurological side effects, particularly in children, and, in my case, it did some damage to the language centers of my brain. But my folks were too proud or too happy to put my treatment behind them to think much about that. When I was in high school I took Latin, and it was impossible for me. In hindsight I should have seen this coming. I was an exceptional student at everything, except spelling where I was a hopeless disaster. But, unwilling to face the fact that their kid might have a learning difficulty, they insisted that my difficulties in Latin were to do with my not trying, being lazy, or not caring. They berated me, punished me for failure to succeed, and kept on me, day in, day out, even over breaks and vacations, for 3 years. I had already developed a sense of pride in my academic work. I was plenty broken up about my inability to handle Latin on my own. This led me to seriously question if I was who I thought I was, what my fitness was for higher education, and what I was doing with my life. And all that before my parents piled on when I needed them, more than anything, to support me. Eventually I managed to squeak through Latin with enough of a passing grade that college wasn't out of the question, though it did a number to my GPA and put it behind me, but the damage to my relationship with my parents was done. The people who should have been my strongest advocates and best allies had cast themselves as my antagonists, and particularly unsympathetic ones at that. At college I sought out the university's learning center which gave me a full workup, and, after a lengthy consult with a neuropsychologist, determined the extent and cause of my difficulties. the load off my chest, knowing that my struggle with language wasn't because of some character flaw of mine or indicative of some greater intellectual failing, but rather an artifact of my cancer treatment, was enormous. But it also led me to understand that my parents could have done so much more to help me, that the signs had been there for anyone with a will to see, and that in their stubbornness, blindness, or pride they had sacrificed their relationship with me and nearly cost me my chance at higher education rather than admit that I might have learning issues. I'm a lot older now, married, professionally successful, and with 3 wonderful kids to boot. I have tried so very hard to forgive them, to let bygones be bygones, and realize that they surely didn't know the consequences of their refusal to consider testing me for learning issues. At the same time, I look at all that I have built, the wonderful family and amazing grandkids I gave them, and wonder how they can have thought any of that would have been worth risking for a higher grade in Latin. Pick your battles with your kids and decide how far you'll push them before you jump in. Took my brother and I out of school to homeschool us. I was in 6th grade, my brother in 5th. And then never actually schooled us. I'm now 21 with a 6th grade education and it bothers me immensely. People constantly tell me I should just go get my JED. They don't understand how much I need to catch up on. I'm pretty much hopeless when it comes to math. Whenever the subject is brought up to my mom, she gets really defensive and blames my brother and I for not showing enough interest in her lessons. Oh, you mean those 2 times you actually tried to have a study session? Ugh, don't get me started. Vanish when I turned 12. Not completely walk out, but when I turned 12 my parents divorced and both decided that their new boyfriends/girlfriends were more important than their 3 daughters. I'm the oldest. At the divorce the other 2 were 7 and 6. While my mother technically had custody of us, she was almost never home. I walked my sisters to school in the morning. Their school was on the way to mine. Luckily, I would walk to the grocery store and buy us food with the money my mom would leave on the counter when she did come home, which was almost always when we were at school. This led to us not seeing our mom for sometimes weeks at a time. This continued for 4 years. I was just old enough to cook, clean and take care of my younger siblings well enough that the only thing that appeared out of place was how exhausted I was all the time. I'm extremely fortunate my sisters only got sick a few times, and those times my mother decided she would come home. About the time I turned 16, my mother came home, and my father decided they wanted to be a part of our lives. I got my driver's license and got out of there as quickly as possible. When I did come home my mom would get tired of me. I admit I was not a nice child to her. I resent her as much now as I did then, and kick me out within a week or 2. So my last 2 years of high school were spent at friends' homes and in my car. My grades slipped, but were still all passing. I graduated just fine and was accepted to a university about an hour away. As a result of this, I have a massive dislike for children and the prospect of being put through motherhood again terrifies me. I was put through it against my will and very young. I don't speak to my mother, but my father and I have made amends and are on very good terms. Finally, my mom was absolutely bananas over dental health. Apparently all of her teeth rotted out of her head as a child. Rather than blame the fact that she didn't brush, she focused in on the lack of fluoride in the drinking water at the time, and blamed that. When she had my brother and then me, she realized that we had well water and well water doesn't have fluoride in it. She went nuts trying to find a doc that would give us a script for fluoride. She finds one, and he says to give us 1 drop once a day. She determines that's now enough and forces us to take 7 drops each twice a day. My brother and especially me had a lot of mysterious ailments growing up. As an adult I'm super short, my teeth are funny looking, and my bones are soft. I got arthritis at very young age. My brother has some issues, not as bad. Come to find out it's chronic fluoride poisoning. She poisoned us with fluoride. Not the dumbest thing, but the first thing that comes to mind. When I was learning how to ride a bike my dad thought it would be a good idea if he tied a chain to the bike and ran alongside me. Not sure what he was hoping to accomplish, because it offered 0 support, but he did it anyways. The idiocy really wasn't that obvious until I finally got a handle over riding and started to speed down the sidewalk. My dad couldn't keep up, and as I kept going he fell behind. He never let go of the chain, so I got yanked off and smashed into the ground. It was just a bad idea, but we laugh at it now. Not letting me go to a different high school. After grade school I specifically asked to go to a different school that was better funded, closer, and had a great reputation. But my parents sent me to the ghetto ass school because my brother went there. Understandable. But high school was a terrible fucking experience. The school was literally falling apart. You would accidentally rip the railings off the walls in the stairwell. Ceiling tiles would fall on your head. Couldn't play basketball cause all the balls were flat. The place was condemned a year or two after I left. The football team was a giant gang. If you pissed off someone on the team you met them after school, the entire team surrounded you, and you let him beat the shit out of you. If you retaliated in any way, the entire team would stomp you the fuck out. A guy on the football team was beating up a gay kid in the hall. A teacher stepped in, and the player knocked him out. But he was a star player so got a 3-day suspension. Gay kid got 2 weeks for starting it by being gay, and, looking at him. As a gay kid in a school where the only 2 out people feared for their lives, it wasn't a great time. Fuck no, I wasn't out. 10th grade a bunch of my friends snapped and switched schools. Again, my parents wouldn't let me. When I saw my friends a few years later they talked about how the school had no cliques, archery classes and shit, and was basically the time of their lives. Not the worst thing, but I might have hated myself a little less. My older sister almost killed me. Several times. My parents were either blissfully ignorant of it, or downplayed the seriousness. This was a good 30 to 35 years ago, so if it were to happen today, I'm pretty sure someone would have gotten child welfare services involved. It didn't help that both my parents came from deep south us backwoods families, so it wasn't uncommon for siblings to be rough and tumble. But my sister is 6 years older than me, so it took a long time for me to catch up in size. It wasn't that I didn't try to defend myself. I would hit her, and it wouldn't hurt enough to dissuade her. When I was an infant, she climbed into my crib specifically because she had chicken pox and my mother told her to stay away from me because it might kill me. It almost did. She burned me. She stabbed me. She shot me with a pellet gun. She scratched me. She slapped me. A lot. It was the burn and the stabbing that almost killed me. The burn was of the 2nd degree variety and got infected. The infection hospitalized me. Fortunately, the stabbing was just a flesh wound, but a few inches to my left, or up the chest, and we would have been talking about a pretty serious situation. On the plus side, I wasn't shareable at school. I might have been her personal punching bag, but I was her punching bag. Anyone who threatened me at school was going to get the full brunt of her near homicidal wrath. When I was about 9 or 10 she smacked me for whatever reason, and when I hit her back, I knocked her down. I could see her thoughts on her stunned face. Holy shit. That actually hurt. It was the last time she laid a hand on me with malicious intent. We weren't connected through the rest of her teen years, and for many years after. I barely saw her throughout my high school and college years. Life kicked her in the ass a lot because of her choices. I don't feel sorry for her, and she eventually became a good person. We have a reasonable relationship and she's apologized a few times for how she treated me as a kid. She'll smile and say, but it toughened you up, right? I suppose if by toughened you mean physically and somewhat emotionally scarred, then sure. To this day, though, I can't understand how my parents could just let it go on. I've brought it up to my mom once or twice. She just shrugged and said that wasn't any worse than what my brothers did to each other. Taught me to be extremely frugal. I barely get to spend money on myself or friends, so when I do get the opportunity, call this my little revenge. I go all out. Hey, I just bought a book on Amazon. You want a coffee maker? Hey, I just bought myself a pack of condoms. You want a stripper? Hey, I just bought myself a pack of gum. You want some Jolly Ranchers? And whoop, there it is. I'm 23 now, and I moved back to my parents' house for a year before going off to law school. My parents don't let me lock my bedroom door for any reason. Sometimes I close the door to change my clothes, and after a few seconds my mom would come running down the hall and yell, "Why is your door closed? I need to move out." Like now. I haven't jerked off in my own room for more than a week. I can't even lock the door at night because they always check in on me before going to bed. Ugh. My dad told me don't stress so hard about school. Your sister is the smart one. You're the pretty one. Both of them either not noticing or ignoring I suffered from an eating disorder in my teenage years, which was a manifestation of generalized anxiety disorder. My father is a psychologist and my mother struggles with bipolar. Whoosh. Only got help once I moved out. Yeah, my sister is a doctor, but she hates it and is going into academics, and I'm getting a law degree. I love them, but that's mean shit to say to both of us. My parents didn't think I would be able to handle Bambi's mother's death when I was younger, so they recorded it to another VHS with that section edited out. The eventual confusion and feeling of deception was far more shocking. I didn't know Bambi's mother died until I was 22 and had a playful drunken argument enforcing the theory that she didn't. They thought I had lost my goddamn mind. My father truly believed that the different colored notes that students took home with them in primary school were some kind of substitute for grades. So whenever I brought home a blue note, equivalent to not doing well, rather than a green note, doing well, the next day, after bringing in a blue note, he threatened to leave me at school and would file papers to disown me as a child while I was only 8 years old. Now, being the young child I was, I started crying and walked into the classroom with tears running down my face. The other students tried to console me, and the teacher even asked me what was wrong, despite both of them thinking that I was mentally handicapped because English wasn't my first language. After telling them in broken English how my father did not want me anymore, I was sent to the principal's office and my father was called in, who of course was furious with me. The staff tried to set up some counseling program, but my father would have none of it and instead opted to take me home and beat me for telling other people about my problems. I don't know how I still have any shred of respect for that man.